A couple of days ago, I was sorting through some stuff, throwing out some old papers, uh, and I came across a box uh, that I hadn't opened for a while, and it was a box of old posters from promotional things that I've done over the years. This one was from the last century, which is a very exotic phrase to use, from around the mid 1990s when I was promoting uh, the first book that I wrote, Another Heart in His Hand. And at that time, we were living in Arkansas, and the nearest city was Memphis, Tennessee. Nearest city of any size was Memphis, Tennessee. So we did some test promotional lectures there. And this particular one was at Memphis State University. And so we would have a particular routine. We would arrange with the school, local author, a new book, talking about the book or whatever ideas in the book. And they were receptive to it. It was a smaller school, mostly known for athletics. So then we would make posters and put them up around campus. And I enjoyed making the posters, playing with the computer and making designs. And my picture was on the poster and said some things and various things to make it attractive to people to come. So we had this program in an auditorium, and probably, I don't know, 75 people came. The auditorium could have fit probably 500 people. About 75 students came, and maybe a couple of other people. They were probably looking for some entertainment, relatively bored, mediocre to poor concentration. But I said some good things, I thought, and wasn't looking necessarily to get feedback, but more to see what this would be like, to do something called promote the book, something I had never done before. So after, are there any questions? Of course, there were no questions. And then people started to disperse. And I was there with a few friends, and we were kind of getting together, ready to go downtown to hear some Memphis blues and talking to each other. And this girl comes up and said, I work for the school newspaper, and I really like the things you said, and could I interview you? So I definitely didn't want to do it then, because, as I said, we were going downtown to listen to some music, and it started at a certain time. This is last century, so I have to fill in some of the details. But I said, tomorrow I'll meet you, because we were staying over, because it was a few hours back to where we lived in the middle of Arkansas. So we were staying over, so I said, sure, let's get together tomorrow at the cafeteria and we'll talk. And I knew the cafeteria was a nice venue because we had been there earlier in the day and I was hanging out there. So she said, okay, and we set a time. And this may have even been the first interview I did in relation to this book, but I don't remember that for sure. So I showed up probably a few minutes early, and I was sitting at a table with one or two of the other people that were my friends that were with me. And at the next table, very close by, was a young guy, and he kind of looked over at me a couple of times. he said, and he said eventually, were you the guy whose picture was on the poster? So I said, yeah. And he said, my friend went to your thing last night, and he said, you presented yourself as someone who was kind of a magic man that could do supernatural stuff. So I said, well, not exactly supernatural stuff, but I know some things. Or, I said something, I don't remember what I said, but I probably said something like that. And he said, well, I need some supernatural help. So he started to tell me this thing that he had to do. I don't remember what it was at this time, but he had something, and it seemed like a worthwhile thing. Maybe it was a job interview, or maybe it was a date with a new girl, or whatever it was. It was a nice story, and he told me the story, and the girl who was going to interview me hadn't shown up yet. So I was listening to his story and feeling supportive. So the story tailed off a little bit, and I said, so what can I do to help? Anything I can do? And I was, in a way, joking, because he said, I heard you could do, whatever it is. So he said, yeah, I have to cross the bridge. There's a bridge across the river there. The river runs right through the Mississippi River, no? Yes. Mm-hmm. Mississippi River runs right through there. There's a bridge between Arkansas and Memphis. And you have to go across the bridge. There's a lot of traffic on the bridge sometimes. So he said, I said, what can I do for you? And he said, well, you can stop the traffic on the Mississippi River Bridge, so I won't have trouble. You can eliminate the traffic on the Mississippi River Bridge, so I can just get to Arkansas real easy, because where I have to go is on the other side of the bridge. So I said, well, I can do a lot of things, and maybe I could even do that. But tell me, what would be if I did that, what would be the impact on the kid who was being taken to the hospital? And he looked, and he said, and what would be the impact you would get to your appointment, but what's the impact of the man that was coming home from work or coming home to his family, and he hadn't been there for a while, and they were getting kind of alienated, and if he got there late, it would be just another screw up, and it'd be like that. So I said, I can't do that, because there are so many implications to everything we do, and if we don't really know all those implications, how can we make those kind of changes? We certainly don't know the future, but even if we knew the possibilities, we don't know which one of those possibilities could come out. So he said, yeah, I get you. I said, but so tell me, what can I do for you that isn't in that realm? So he said, well, you could buy me a 6-pack of beer. So I said, that I can do, but if you promise me one thing, don't drink and drive. And if you're going to go across the bridge and do it, don't drink it first, drink it when you get home. He said, okay. And I gave him the money to buy a 6-pack, and that was the end of the story. And I'm telling you this because I said I'm going to be away for a couple of weeks. And I really want you to understand, and I want people to understand, that everybody has an opinion, and everybody's entitled to have an opinion. And everybody knows what should be done and how it should go. Everybody has ideas about politics, about ideas about finance, about ideas about their friends and their family, and just what people should be doing to make it go better. But of course, nobody really knows all the permutations and possibilities. And if you don't really know all the permutations and possibilities, you can have the best intention, and you can even be correct in a limited way. But there's some things that you don't know. So the safest thing to do is to ask questions to help the person bring forth what they might understand, rather than to give them what you understand. ask questions to help them see what they can make of what they're doing, what they can see through to the subtleties of what they're doing. Help them to explore, and if they come up with a conclusion, it's their conclusion. It's not your conclusion. And certainly I've been saying this in different ways, but it's very difficult in our culture to convey the importance of asking questions to help a person figure something out and not necessarily think that you're going to figure it out for them. But there is one exception. There's one exception, and in that one exception, you can always feel okay to convey to a person something that you understand in this particular one area. So I'm going to tell you another experience that I had when I was really young, probably the first time that I ever recognized this truth, which you can feel free to convey to anybody who you see them not understanding or not following that truth. Also from the next century, obviously, because I was very young. Probably the first time that I got that idea, this idea, which I will explain to you now. I'll tell you the story and explain it. When I was a kid, I played the violin. I've talked about that before. I started taking violin lessons very young, I think probably 4 years old. And by the time I was probably 9 years old, 10 years old, I peaked, and I could play pretty well. And I played out a few times in school things or, little performances, nothing of any major consequence, but I was able to manage playing solo violin, classical music. And I started to, Elvis came around and I started to lose interest, but I still continued to take lessons up until about 14, probably about 14, so 4 to 14, 10 years. And then I stopped taking lessons and I was thinking what other instruments I could play so that I could be in a rock and roll band type thing. Which at that time, the fiddle didn't fit at all, or my knowledge of the fiddle didn't fit at all. Now it fits a little better. And I could have been a fiddler in a rock and roll band and never met any of you, and never written this book, and never be sitting here telling this story. So that's all. So I was pretty good at the violin from 14, certainly as good as anybody my age around. And then I went to high school, and I had no intention of playing the fiddle in the band in the high school orchestra, no interest whatsoever, but I found out, it's important to know that I moved from the city to the country, to the suburbs, around this time. And so I moved to high school, a new high school, when I was a junior, about 11th grade, that's 11th grade. In 11th grade, 10th grade, I was in a different high school. So everybody in the school had been there before then, from the 9th grade or the 10th grade or whatever. So I was coming in late, and I didn't know my way around, and I didn't really know any people. But I did find out from some people that if you're in the school orchestra, you can skip a lot of classes. So I said, this is for me, I want to be in the school orchestra. And so I went down and I auditioned, and obviously I could play well. And the teacher, his name was Mr. Schilling, he wanted me to be in the orchestra. He said, but I know you have the skill, but you're just showing up for the first time. And this girl, Hester, who actually happened to be in my homeroom class, we called her Hester with the best of Chester. That's what we called her. So I didn't know her other than that. you know, how shallow 14-year-old kids can be. So she was the first violin, and there were 3 first violin and 3 second violins, but he said, I can make you the first second violin. So I was the first second violin. And the first violins play more melody, the second violins play more counterpoint to the melody, which was fine for me because really I didn't have any aspirations, or was I seeking to be the first violin. You have more. The first violin in an orchestra is called the concertmaster. And if you ever saw a classical concert, the conductor shakes hands with the concertmaster after the thing, and sometimes before as well. And there's responsibility that goes with that, which I did not want. So I was delighted to be playing that, being in the second violin, because mainly I wanted to be able to get out of whatever classes that it allowed you to get out of. You know, you say, oh, we have rehearsal. And so rehearsal means like whatever it is. So I was in this, so I was in the orchestra, and actually I had a wonderful time. It was really a wonderful time. I made friends over something that I'd really never made friends of, and we joked around, and it was really a highlight of my my junior year in high school. Not so much the playing, but some of it was good, but making fun of the teacher who was the conductor, who had some curious habits. And of course, how could you not have a habit? People are watching you, you know, the kids are watching you, and if you do anything that's anything at all, that becomes your brand. So we would make fun of him a little and like that. And, you know, he would turn around and we would make fun of him. But it was all in relatively good nature. It wasn't a nasty thing. So we're rehearsing now for, this is a good deal of the year went by, and now we're rehearsing for the seniors. I was a junior, for the seniors' graduation, which is a big thing, you know. So we're rehearsing this, and we have to play all kinds of things, and we have to learn some new things. And Mr. Schilling is coming up with these different things that we have to learn and play. And we're joking around, and so all of a sudden he says, "Gold. Do you think this is funny?" Or one of those kind of things. He said, I'm trying to conduct this, because that's what he's doing. You know, he's stop, okay, start, and he's doing it with the stick and like that, and then, okay, stop, you do this, you do that. And, you know, he's very active in doing this because he's trying to make it sound great. So he said, "Gold, you think this is funny? You think you could do this? Come on up." So he had me come up. He went to sit down, and he gave me the stick, and he said, "You know the piece," whatever the piece was, which I did. And he said, "You conduct it." So I figured, no problem. You know, I can do this, you know. So I started, you know, tap, tap, I comment, cut, tap, like this. And I started, and people started to play. And I started to think, like, there was a flute thing in there. And I started thinking, why is she playing so quietly? And then I lost my place. And then, so then I had to start saying, okay, start again to do that. And throughout the thing, I could tell you how it went, but I remember clearly not the individual things that I did. But I was talking to myself about what people were doing. How come he's looking down? He's supposed to be looking at me. Lost my place. And after a while, I started getting the idea that I was incapable of doing this thing because I couldn't stay with the moment of the music. I couldn't. Now, when I was playing, I could stay with the moment of the music. But when I was watching other people and trying to coordinate what they were doing, I couldn't do that. I would always either say something that was not helpful, or I would not say anything, which was also not helpful. And everybody knew it because the next 15 minutes or so was chaos. And so I looked over him and he said, "See what I mean?" And I had to say yes. Or maybe I said no. I don't remember what I said. But I went to sit down and I recognized not a newfound respect for what he was doing, but the necessity for doing one thing at a time and being in the moment and not having my talking to myself change that ability to be in the moment and take one thing at a time, to be here now with each thing, not to get ahead of myself, not to get behind myself. And I'm telling you this because that is the one exception. You never have to think, is it okay to say, is it not okay to say, is it like the going across the Mississippi River Bridge where if you did stop traffic, what would happen to all the other people? You'd have to know every car and everything that happened, so you could never make that call. But you can make the call for being here now. And if you cross paths with somebody, whether they're a spiritual seeker, a psychological explorer, a person who's trying to excel in finance, a person who's trying to excel in sports, whatever a person is trying to accomplish, and you cross paths with them and you have some interaction with them and you can see in that interaction that they're losing the ability to stay here now with one thing. You can advise them. You can counsel them. Everything else, you should ask questions. But you should never hesitate to bring a person back on track from staying here now, being here now. Not worrying about the past or anxiety about the future. Not planning while you're being here now, but being here now. So I want to convey the importance of this because everybody here has a valuation for that particular thing, certainly from the moments of experience that they've had, from the 4 visions of being here now that they've had. If you do an exercise, and many physical exercises that people do, whether it's in the gym or it's a spiritual type of exercise, or it's a mantra type exercise, everybody knows, a meditation type exercise, that you find yourself sitting there trying to meditate on whatever you do, whether it's a candle or a mantra or some internal experience, that you find yourself figuring out your finances. You find yourself having a conversation with somebody, reviewing a conversation that you had earlier and thinking, why didn't I say that? I could have said that. Or worrying about or concerned about something in the future. But you lose the being here now. Now, anybody who has tried to line dance, you know what line dance is? Anybody who's tried to line dance. Now, you can freeform dance. You can freeform dance and you can think about 1,000 things while you're freeform dancing. But if you're trying to do line dancing, if you ever watched line dancing and you're with the other people, if you stop thinking, having your attention on what you're doing, they're going to be facing this way and you're going to be facing that way. And they're going to be looking at you like, what's this idiot doing, you know? And it's not only in line dancing, it's in sports, it's in whatever you do. If you're not in the moment, then you're missing something really important. If you're reading a book and you find yourself having gone through a whole page and on to the next page, what did I just read? I have no idea. My eyes scanned the words, but I really wasn't there with the experience. I wasn't there. I missed it because I wasn't here now. And all the different things that you do, whatever they are, if you're walking in the woods, One moment you're looking at the trees, one moment you're feeling the glory of nature, and the next moment you've walked 100 yards and you didn't even realize you were in the woods. That's a loss. That's a self-imposed penalty. Because, as I've said before, we figure age in terms of how many years you live. But really, how many moments you're here now is really the only quantification of age. And you know that because if you have 10 minutes of being here now, you recognize the precious experience that can yield. And whatever you did before or after is almost not real to you as those 10 minutes when you were absorbed. Now, most absorption comes from the outside. We are not very good at being absorbed. We need something to absorb us. So we need really graphic movies with a lot of sex and violence and bright colors and a lot of motion, because if it's too subtle, we float away. And, you know, the inventions, internet inventions, you know, quicker, more dynamic. You can watch a 20-second video of people falling down and, you know, it's entertaining, and then something else and something else. We all know that usually we have the capacity to be absorbed by that, by external things. But to actually be able to be absorbed is a phenomenal accomplishment, that you don't need something externally to bring you into the here and now, whether it's a dynamic movie or a beautiful moment with another person. You don't, if you didn't need those stimulus to absorb you, and you could actually become absorbed from within, that you are capable of being absorbed, imagine what life would be for you. Now, right now, there are people in this room that are listening to me. I told a funny story and I told another story. You're absorbed. Everybody's listening to me. You're pretty much right here. But what if I start to repeat the story again? What if I said, you know, I want to tell that story again because I forgot. It wasn't really in Memphis. It was in St. Louis. You know, you'd start to float away, because really the capacity to be absorbed is very dependent on the stimulus that's absorbing us. And that's not fair to ourselves. But at least it's better to be absorbed externally than not to be absorbed at all. So if you meet someone, or you cross paths with someone, or you interact with each other, whether that person you're interacting with has the capacity or not to absorb themselves, it still is good advice, because the precious element of life is dependent on a multiplicand of presence, of being here now. And if you can add that multiplicand, if you can add that, and you can advise another person to add that, to come back to that, then you're going to enrich that moment of that person's life for as long or as short as they can remember it. And if you can, by whatever disciplines you've taken on, whatever system that you have for yourself, develop the natural ability, uncover the natural ability to be here now, to be not so easily distracted. If you can develop that ability, that natural ability, your life will be different. You won't be desperate, because desperation comes of need. And need comes of there's something missing. And I'm telling you, the something missing isn't the event. It's not the person. It's not the situation. It's not the location. It's not the amount of money. It's not the amount of attention. It's not the amount of regard that people have for you. It's the amount of presence. In the moment of presence, everything is bright colors. Everything is extraordinary sounds. Everything is super real. And when you have that experience, you're not rushing to get on to the next thing. And what a gift in life not to be rushing to get on to the next thing, because the sequence of rushing to get on to the next thing is ubiquitous. It never ends, because there's always a rushing to get on to the next thing, and then rushing to get on to the next thing. And we delude ourselves in thinking that the next thing will be better. But the next thing will only be better if it's powerful enough to draw us in. So think of the need. I need power. I need powerful things. I need powerful stimulus. I need more. I need more. I need more. You know, if you're wealthy, you go shopping. You know, or you do exotic things. If you can't afford to do exotic things, you watch people on the internet or in movies or on TV. You watch people do exotic things. The more exotic, the better, because it allows you to be drawn in, to be here now. But the essence of the experiences that you value, that you can value, and that you will value, are the experiences that you have, no matter how subtle, if you're here now with them.